بهذا الدرس راح نتناول 570 مصطلح يسمونها academic word list, 570 expressions or words that you need in your academic study, whether you want to study IELTS, TOEFL, or any standard academic test. But because I don't want to be so teacher oriented, I want to contextualize and draw some relevance to these expressions in English and highlight them within a context that you're familiar with, that we can use to practice English and make it part of our life. So I'll tell you a story that happened to me because I love to tell stories. I don't want to abandon the fact that this relevance of the story is really tied with the context of the story. But my professor asked me to write an abstract about a project that I have within the academy. And I was not on campus, so I had to access the facility. And in order to access the facility where I am supposed to write the abstract, I needed to find some accommodation to accommodate myself in the facility because it was locked due to COVID pandemic. When I arrived on campus, I saw the guard. He had to open the door for me because I forgot my badge. And I sat at the library and I started to accumulate sources of different kinds to achieve my target for the day. But I need to acknowledge that all of that was just because of how much momentum I got from my professor. If you want to acquire any knowledge in any field, you need to be adaptive to the changes and challenges that you face in your field. But be close to your mentor. You have to be adjacent to your mentor to have adequate understanding of your major and what steps you have to get to your target. Part of my work is to advocate for youth and adults who want to learn English. So I need to read online magazines and newspapers to find the modern trends to teach EFL and ESL context, and then administer that on my students in the classroom because I want to see and probe how much impact this kind of research has on my students because they are eventually trying to learn something. So with the aid of technology, I could aggregate so many sources for teaching English and making all of that part of my research that I have, that I advocate with my professor, that hopefully can be published later on. Some of the feedback I get from my professor affects me. Maybe it affects partially my self-esteem because, I'm a human being and I receive criticism with a grain of salt. But my professor honestly wants to aid me, albeit he wants to offer me the assistance that I deserve as a student working as a graduate assistant. His assistance will not alter the final results, but it will redirect me if I derail from the research steps that he stipulated for me. He offers me some amendments and criticism for my writing, and proofreading and feedback maybe is left marginally or secondary here. He focuses on anything that is ambiguous so that I can demystify and make it clear to the reader or the listener. And he always tells me this: write to me and explain to me as if you're explaining this concept to a child. Of course, he never anticipates that I get 100% accurate research proposal from the early beginning. It's a process. He tells me writing is a process. So you need to be open-minded and anticipate any sort of feedback that I get. You have just to take it and run the amendments accordingly within the timeline. And I really appreciate his approach with me because he's so friendly and open-minded. And I really appreciate him when he appends any sort of side comments on the document. My professor wants to approximate my thoughts with his thoughts when it comes to the agreement and disagreement. But honestly, sometimes we have to agree to disagree. And this is really understandable in the field of academics. Linguisticians from all over the world agree to disagree sometimes on certain concepts and agreements and disagreements that they have with each other. And, in the field of science, everything can look arbitrary from the beginning. But once you dig deep in the field, you will understand eventually how the field is running. There's certain aspects of my field that I'm still ignorant about. And I'm trying my hard to read all kind of online journals or magazines or watch YouTube videos to assemble any sort of source or evidence or proof that supports and backs up my theory that I have when it comes to teaching English to adult learners. My professor assesses my work and assumes that all the effort that I put is purely mine with a little bit of help from the reading that I do here and there. And then he assigns me another task to assure that I am on the right track of fulfilling the objectives of our work on a monthly basis. And 90% of that is done online through online communication between me and him via emails. And when I want to attain his attitude regarding certain matter, I pay him a visit because he is the author of so many books in my field. So he can give me the authorization and attribute to me any sort of effort that I exerted during the process. He's always available at 4 p.m. and he's aware of the effort that I exert every day. So he's really appreciating what I do. Now we have finished the first part of the 570 vocabulary. Academic ones, we call them AWL, academic word list. I want you to write down after me all the words that you see in yellow and make sure to write them down in a notebook and say them again and 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 again until they stick in your memory, and activate them verbally. So you need to practice them mechanically using your mouth and muscles, because language is not only dormant inside your memory, it should be activated. It should be replenished by consistency of practice. You can practice in front of your phone, record yourself, watch yourself talking using these words. And in this way, your English will become excellent. Thank you very much.